Socionics is the theory of information metabolism, ion types, and the interrelationships between those types. Socionics has two approaches to Model A. The intrapersonal, which is what's going on inside the person, and the interpersonal, which is going on between the person and other people. I start with what's going on inside the person's mind. There's been much interest in how people process information. There's been a lot of experiments and a lot of models made. One of the most popular models at this time that I'm aware of is Atkinson's and Shiffrin's model of memory. This video is to show how Socionics fits in really well with this model of memory. According to the model of memory, there are two types of stimulus. You have the external stimulus and internal stimulus. External stimulus comes from stimulus to our sensory receptors. All those things that our sensory perceptions pick up from the outside world. Internal stimulus is the stimulus that comes from our neural connections. If you have a person who seeks out a lot of sensory receptor stimulus, then it's going to create or trigger sensoric memories. As it's going to strengthen the sensory memories, the more sensory details they add to it, the stronger the sensoric memories become. But if a person tends to ignore a lot of the sensory stimulus and focus more on the internal stimulus, the neural connections that pop up in their minds, then they start to lose a lot of that sensoric details until it reaches a point that they're dealing with abstract memories. Over the course of any given moment, there's a lot of stimulus from both the external and internal that goes through a portion of our mind, but not all of it gets attended to. Information that gets attended to are things like when we're looking for something, such as when we're trying to research a topic, or when we're driving. We're focused on things that are involved with driving, and we'll tend to ignore things that aren't involved with driving, well, at least if we're driving safely. We also become attendant to things that are familiar. When this happens, what's happening is that the stimulus is triggering a memory, something that's already known in the neural networks. And because it triggers, it's like lights up, and then it becomes to our attention. Like when we see the face of a family member or a friend. Other things that catch our attention are things that are out of the ordinary or unusual. When this happens, the stimulus is lighting up it's lighting up two already known memories, but those memories aren't normally triggered at the same time, and for some reason this out of ordinary experience is triggering them both at the same time, and that unusualness will catch our attention. Such as a clock. We're used to seeing a clock. We wouldn't normally notice the clock, except that this clock has a different numbering system. We usually see faces. We're familiar with seeing faces, so we don't normally pay as much attention to all the different faces that we see unless it's something that we actually know. But when we see something that's completely unusual, such as all this light and such reflecting off of this person's face, then the image will catch our attention because it's unusual. If a stimulus does not meet any of these attention requirements, then it gets forgotten. If it does catch our attention, then it goes into our working memory, which is also known as our conscious memory. When we have information in our working memory, we do stuff with it. If we keep repeating it, such as when we're repeating a phone number that we need to call, it gets put into our long-term memory. There's an algorithm in terms of maximizing the repetition to get it into the long-term memory, and there's actually been a lot of studies on that as well. We can also connect the information that's in our working memory. We can connect it to previous experiences or previous knowledge that we have. When we make those connections, not only do we find meaning in the information that we're holding, but we also help to create the cues that keeps it into our long-term memory. Those cues are what we use to help bring it back up to recall. It's believed that there are a few different types of memories that we retain in our long-term memory. We have the sensoric memories, such as when we remember a picture, an image, or the sound of a voice, or the sound of a song, the pitch, and all that stuff. We have procedural memories, which is the motor memories, or the conditional responses, such as picking up a glass of water or driving a car. Initially we had to pay conscious attention to it, but then it became so repeated over and over that it's natural for us just to go and do it without having to give it thought. There's also what's called declarative memories. This is the type of memory that is interesting in terms of socionics. When we're talking about declarative memories, you're talking about the memories or the information that we can talk about, read about, write about, or think about. There are four major ways to organize the information, and there are two major types. The four major ways to organize information involve components, the essence, transitions, and sequences or structures. Components include the parts, such as we have a Volkswagen part here. You can see all the little different parts, but when you combine it all together, it becomes the Volkswagen model. We can also organize it in terms of the essence, which is the central unifying theme. If we have a Volkswagen, what makes a Volkswagen Bug a Volkswagen Bug? Is it a car? Well, no, because there's other types of cars. Is it a car made by Volkswagen? Well, yes, but they also make other cars that aren't Volkswagen Bugs or Beetles. So is it the unique shape? Possibly, but not necessarily the only property that the Volkswagen Bug makes it what it is. As you combine the properties, you start to get the essence of what it is that makes something what it is. We can also talk about transitions, which is the continuous changes over time and space. If we line up each Volkswagen Bug from each of the year from the beginning of when it was first created until the most current model, we would be able to see various transformations that the model has undergone. Or we could go, sequence by sequence, year by year, covering each of the different changes that have occurred, why those changes were made, and any of the effects of those changes. There are also two types of declarative memories, what they refer to as facts and events. Semantic memories are the so-called facts that are independent of context or personal relevance. You don't remember where, when, or how you learned it, but you learned it. We refer to this as objective knowledge, and we'll actually get into that a little bit later. Episodic memories are the memories of events and personal experiences. These episodic memories are usually told in stories and analogies, and these are also what we commonly use for fantasizing, or anticipating future events or remembering past events. When you are focused on the event or experience, your mind creates or triggers event cues. When you recollect the experience, you are recollecting those event cues. When you are focused on the semantics, the facts or the symbols, your mind creates or triggers those semantic cues. When you recollect the facts, you're recollecting these semantic cues. Basically, you're building up a storage of cues. Some people will have more episodic cues, others will have more semantic cues. Now, these types of memories are interesting to socionics in the sense that, okay, if I tell you something I've experienced, and then you tell me something you've experienced, if our experiences are similar, if they match in some ways, then we feel a sense of connection. The more they match, the more we feel connected. If our experiences don't match, then we feel disconnected, and we don't really want to hang out with each other because, my experiences don't seem to link up with your experiences, and it's like we live in two different worlds. This is what creates the social arena, by sharing experiences and developing the closeness or developing the disconnect. On the other hand, if I share a fact of information with you, that's independent, remember it's independent of any context, and then you share the fact with me, if the fact matches, then we call it truth, because we refer to it as objective knowledge because we both have this so-called fact. And since it's not linked to any kind of context, then we refer to it as objective truth. If our facts don't match up, then you might argue in support of yours as being the truth, and I might argue in support of mine being the truth. Or we could both look to see what the underlying truth is that allows for both of these facts to exist. This sharing of facts and looking for the underlying truths or objective knowledge or objective truths, it leads us to the academic arena. There are other ways that these two types of memories can interact. They can interact with each other, such as when talking about a personal experience, and your doctor or therapist gives that experience a label, at which point you can use that label as a shorthand term for the experience, thereby beginning the process of turning the experience into a semantic memory by using symbols or related terms. Another way is when you start out with the facts, and then you look for a personal experience to support it. Or that might match up with it, such as when we have the socionics theory and then we're looking for experiences that might match up with that theory. So when we bring these components of the memory model together, we have the stimuli, memory types, and organization cues. These components fit well with the socionics 8 IM elements. Does the person seek more stimuli from senses or stimuli from musings? Are they looking more for the essence of something or for the transitions that are occurring? Do they focus more on the components or the sequence and structure of what's going on? Do they remember things as facts and symbols, or do they remember things as events and experiences? Feel free to do more research on this. There's lots of information on experiments being done and how some education systems are trying to make use of some of the memory model. It is my opinion that socionics has much to offer in these areas. If, however, you're aware of a better model that's being researched and experimented with, I'm open to new ideas.